everyone, and thank you for being here to another episode of Unlucky Gamers Talk. I am Diego. Nice to meet you. If this is the first case in which you're following, I am a creative director with, now basically 17 years almost, because next year of experience. I have worked, my most recent game are Star Overdrive and A Quiet Place. I also am a lecturer, a writer, and everything. And mostly I am unlucky. In fact, as you probably noticed, I'm not in a very professional place, so to speak,
Oh, I'm sure that's
because
just the background, the magic
yeah, it's a
background.
very convincing virtual background. Very convincing. Absolutely. I am in my car because my computer doesn't work. So I'm doing it from my phone because we are grind mindset, work, wake up at 6 a.m., all that stuff for sure. But no, I wanted to do it. It's a super cool episode today, and yeah. So even by car, because we are unlucky, we're still doing it.
Yeah,
You real?
fortunately, we never skipped an episode, and that's the grind
No,
that we
of
are going
course,
for.
never.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Muriel. I'm a game designer and a producer, currently working for Punkle and being the producer for Vampire Survivors. I'm also in the national board for EGDA, International Game Development Association. I usually don't mention that.
Yeah, it's true.
But this time I will, because we are organizing the Global Game Jam for next year, 2026, and I'm really excited about that. So yeah, today I felt like mentioning it.
Makes sense. And actually, I'm interested too. If I found a team that wants to make not a serious game, I want to make something super stupid, and they need a pure designer because we never talk about that. I am a pure designer in the sense that I don't touch the engine. I only work on documents, vision, direction of the team, and things like that. But if someone wants, I'm happy to participate in jam with a team. It will be super fun. It's a lot of years that I don't do it. That's why I want to do a stupid game. I want to do something a bit silly.
After 17 years.
And I see someone is watching us, so thank you for watching, and thank you for giving us your time. We invite you always to chit chat with us, and giving your opinion, your comments, everything, because we are here to discuss together in a very friendly way. And this episode is very special, and it comes from Uriel idea. So I will let Uriel, introduce it.
Thank you, Diego. And before introducing it, actually think that what you mentioned is very interesting about the specific kind of designer that you are. Maybe in the future we could do an episode about designers and
Oh
who,
yes,
who who they are,
absolutely.
what do they do, what different kinds of designers can
How
exist,
unlucky.
how unlucky they can be. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sorry for that. You just spark an idea. So
No,
yeah,
it's a super good
today's
idea.
episode is about indie games, and more precisely, what is an indie game? This has been like a very simple answer in my mind for a long time, until a few weeks, maybe a month ago. I was chatting with a friend of mine, Damiano. He is an Italian journalist specialized in video game and other nerdy stuff. And we started talking about this, and I actually realized I have no idea how to properly classify an indie game. What does it mean to be an indie game? And in the last weeks, I found myself talking about this argument with many other people, and every time we lighten this conversation, super interesting and insightful new perspective came in. Then I read Diego's post a few days ago on LinkedIn about Diego's Game Award. Very
There was
funny
that no
post.
one wants.
Well, I was happy to read it because I noticed that he also shared some of my point of view on this argument. So yeah, I really wanted to talk about this, and we will start exactly from the Game Awards, because this is something that has been discussed a long and long time and time again in the recent days after the nomination and then the actual awards, specifically discussing one sector, that was the best indie game. The nomination was discussed, and then Expedition 33 winning the actual prize. Yeah, that was also not everyone agreed on that. And why?
I don't agree.
Because okay, let's dive into that. Why don't you agree?
Okay, well, first I want to actually say a couple of things before starting it, which is first is three things actually. First is I love Expedition 33. I absolutely think it deserved the GOTY. I absolutely think it deserved the best music, 100%. And what other prize did? I think it deserved at least another prize, a third one. I don't remember which one. And not all of them for me. For example, not best indie and not best performance. I would have given that to Troy Baker. But in any case, so I'm a big fan of Expedition 33. I want to say this is the first point. Big fan of Expedition 33. Because it's important, because maybe you say, like, no. Second point is why I think it's important to have the discussion. And for this, I want to say, and give an example, that let's say, okay, just randomly, that also now you're super illuminated because there's a car that is parking in front of me. So we just need to have this park for the next 1 hour and we are perfect. But no, well, okay, other than that. So why I think is important to having this discussion? For a very simple reason. Let's take a second outside video game, and I want to give a bit of a silly example, okay? But please bear with me. Let's say that we are doing a competition for the best runner, okay? The person who runs the fastest. The classic 100-meter competition. Also, someone join us. Thank you for giving us your time. Thank you for joining us. As today you can see, I am in a very unique settings, clear and obscure, clear, obscure. Now I'm in the car. Please say hi and feel free to give questions and everything. We are discussing about what is an indie. So what I was saying, so let's say this silly example that we are discussing about the best runner in the world, okay? Now, I don't know who won the last, but I know that Usain Bolt, I think, still retains the record for the fastest man story at the moment recorded, right? Or am I wrong, Uriel?
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm not.
Okay.
Really
For the sake of argument, let's say it's him. Okay, now, once again, let's say that he didn't retire on anything, and you are a teenager, and you are doing your high school, running competition, and Usain Bolt appears, and he starts to run against you, and you will lose because, well, probably you are a very good runner as a teenager. Probably you are super good, but probably you are not comparable to the fastest man in history. So why I think it's important to have categories like best indies, because sometimes games needs to be evaluated in a vacuum. So sometimes this is a great game no matter what, okay? But sometimes also game need to be evaluated not in a vacuum, but compared to certain things. Like it's not correct to say maybe a game that costed 3 euros to be compared to a game that costed 300 millions. An example of that is once again in Game Jam. I a lot of time go to Game Jam. Uriel said, we have the Game Jam AGDA. I'm sure that when Uriel, you ever been a judge of a Game Jam?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sure that when you have been a judge, you never evaluated the game compared to a finished game, but only comparing it to the concept of making a game in a Game Jam.
Yes.
It will be unfair to compare a game of a Game Jam with a finished product that maybe been working for 2 years. And that's why these are the categories. For me, it's important to have best indie because you need categories to make games shine. Maybe there is a game that is fantastic, but it can't compete with the 300 million or with another thing. It needs to shine. I think is wrong because I don't believe that Expedition 33 is an indie. I believe that Expedition 33 lies in the more or less AA category. a 3-element point. So why I don't think there, even if I consider it a masterpiece, because it's a double A, it's not an indie. Do you consider it an indie, Yurio?
Uh, it's hard to answer for me because, and that's the whole point of the episode. I don't know how to describe an indie, and without a proper definition, I don't know, because under certain circumstances, yes, I think that Expedition is totally an indie game. Under
What kind of
others,
circumstances? What do you think makes him an indie? That's an interesting. We can try to
okay,
understand an indie from that.
Okay, so what makes an indie game? If we consider an indie game to be independent, indie stands for independent usually.
Yes.
And okay, so under what point of view do we consider it independent? Is it independent economically or creatively, or does it have an artistic independence? Because yes, I think that Expedition had a super independent artistic creativity. They had a lot of freedom to create the game that they created, and that's shown in the actual game. Do we consider the game to be independent if it had independence from a budget point of view? So they were not published by an external publisher. In that case, no, I think Expedition
They
was
have a
published,
publisher.
but yeah, by Kepler. So in that case, no. But yeah, there are many aspects that can make the game independent from something.
Mm.
It just
See, for me,
depends
it's a
what
bit
we.
different.
Uh-huh.
I want to start with what you say. Let's start historically speaking, which is indies stand from independent or
Mhm.
independence for more than one. Now, this terminology actually comes from music.
Yes.
Indie music was the music without a label, so without basically a famous company to publish their music. So indie music at that time, when it came from this original terminology, meant something that was kind of cheap and going into weird distribution ways because it didn't have the, let's say, contacts and money to get distributed in the standard way, like on the radio or on TV.
Mhm.
You know, in Italy here, but I'm sure in other nations too, whatever you're watching us, there is this typical thing that at a certain point in summer, all the radio have one song they are trying to push as the song of the summer. And this is a typical distribution maneuver, you know. It's not a good song. You will probably forget it in 3 years. But for that summer, it's kind of like funny, catchy, whatever. So I want to start this point, which is for me, none of the game on the Indie Game Award were indies because most of them had a publisher and the other didn't have in categories. Because if we start historically, an indie is basically, in my opinion, someone poor or poorer than other that doesn't, which means in the game industry doesn't have budget or doesn't have a publisher, that's trying to make a game with this limitation in budgeting and people, and potentially don't go through the normal distribution channels, or it doesn't have the normal ways to be distributed. Which what it means? It means basically you maybe find it on PlayStation 1 year later after it's been super successful, but it wasn't not meant to be on PlayStation. It meant it to be on Steam because kind of everything is on Steam, or it's self-published on itch.io. Then it gets super viral and things like that. Wait, there is a super good message, which I love it, but I need to read it because it's super long. So, Damians. Hello, everyone, and thanks for recalling our chat. I do agree with the conclusion, but there is one thing about the TGA, just for the audience, the Game Awards, that makes the word correct for them. TGA said the best indie game for outstanding creative and technical achievement. Also go longer, sorry for it. in-game made outside the system. So yeah, they're being published by Kepler, which is an indie publisher, non-traditional. So it fits the definition. I don't know. For me, it's still not fit their definition because by saying outside traditional publisher system, for me, having a publisher is a traditional publisher system. Something that I think is not a traditional publisher system is those type of publisher that don't give money or they do other things or they're super small and do other. But this is mine. I don't say I have the solution. Also, this is a good point. I didn't say that. Sorry. It's a super good point, and then I will leave Uriel. But of course, I want to start saying that I don't know. Okay, I'm not here to say I have the magical globe of answer. And Diego say that, so this is the definition in any form or way. I'm not that arrogant. I'm here to discuss it and bring my point. So my point is, an indie should be evaluated by three things: being poor, by people not having a publisher or a very small different publisher. And I think Kepler, for example, Kepler has a lot of game at the Game Awards.
The internet connection. Diego,
Oh,
sorry,
sorry.
the internet connection just went down a bit. If you could repeat.
Oh, sorry. Which part did you lost me? As I say, I'm from a car.
30 seconds.
Oh, okay. So I was saying, an indie for me is defined by being poor in people or money or both. Not having a publisher or having a publisher that it's very limited in what it can do. And here I think is where Kepler doesn't fit that, because a lot of the game show that the TGA were Kepler games, and the TGA cost a lot of money to be shown. And the third point, it's usually, and this is undefinable, of course, a more artistic, I say, approach. But for me, this part can be eliminated. So for me, it's people resources buying an indie for me in the game industry, because the concept of outside that, there are many other ways like single A, double A, triple A, potentially with GTA, quadruple A. I honestly believe also not only GTA is quadruple A. I also believe Kojima games tends to be quadruple A.
Yeah, there is the famous Ubisoft example
exactly.
about the pirates. I don't remember the name.
So for me, it's a budget plus people things that define an indie. Because also, and a price, also price too. Yes, sorry. Budget, publisher, weird publisher, not publisher, price point. Also this. Which doesn't say that if you have 99 euro, you're not an indie, because you could be the others. But usually indies tend to market themselves as more accessible products. Once again, I'm not saying that I have the definition. In fact, I want to hear Uriel understanding and point of views. And also, I want to say something about what Damian says, which is, I fully agree with what Damian says, which is, even if I don't agree with their definition, TGA are a private thing. And like how we say that with the horses last week, it's their show. Their judges, they have the control. If they think Expedition is an indie, from their point of view, are right. I might not agree, but and in fact, in the Diego prize, they didn't win that, but it doesn't mean that if Diego say that is right. In my opinion, it's not an indie, but it's their show, their prize. They can believe whatever they want.
Okay, so yeah, I'm still struggling very much. I've tried all day to think about a potential definition or structure that I personally could give to define an indie, and I totally failed. I need more time, I think. At this point, I only know what is not an indie,
which is a great thing.
And some parameters that I think are very important, because usually in the past, for me, the indie or not indie category was purely about money, because I was thinking about AA and AAA, and for me, indie was the first step. Okay, we got indie, AA, and AAA, and since
for me, it's
AA and
indie,
AAA,
single A, double A, triple A, quadruple A.
Yes, but I didn't know about single A, and yeah, well, okay, quadruple A, I don't really care. at the moment, at least. But yeah, for me, the point was that the other classification were purely about money. It's about almost nothing else. And so for me, automatically speaking, without even thinking or realizing it, for me, indie was about money. Okay, if you are not a double A or a single A and your budget is even smaller, you are automatically an indie. But this is not enough. There are other aspects that are very important to this. Some of these we have mentioned it. So, okay, budget is an important part. Then we have the creative or artistic freedom, the independence from a publisher. I actually like your distinction between general publisher and very, very small publisher that maybe it's not even a publisher, maybe it's just providing a little bit of marketing or just a few services. That's a distinction that could make sense. I think it would be very, very hard to trace a straight line because it gets blurry very, very easily. But yeah, that could make sense. But then there is also the spirit, the mood of the team, like the soul of the team behind the game, that could somehow impact the way that the game is perceived. So is it a team of super experienced people who are working with a proper structure, maybe coming from big AAA companies, or is it literally students developing their first game? I think the soul behind this, the intent, is very different. I'm not sure this should matter when we are deciding if the game is
I
indie or
didn't
not.
thought about that. It's a super interesting point. Sorry to interrupt because I didn't thought about that, and it's super interesting. I think there are two differences here. One is resources, and one is a soul. What I mean by that is, for example, from my experience, this is Diego experience, once again, not necessarily the truth of the world. The more experience you become with gaming, the less attached you become to it because it become a job, you know. Although it's not always true. Once again, Day for Night, which presented at the Game Award, it's the studio of super veterans of Ubisoft Milan that they wanted to go back to their soul, kind of like, we don't want this soulless Ubisoft game. We want to make, so they have a very strong soul.
Mm-hmm.
But also they have an incredible experience. Each of the people in that studio has kind of like 30 years of experience, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
They are kind of my age, but in knowledge in video game, kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So I think the soul cannot be considered part of the indie. Also because the soul, as I say, the soul is potentially you are a super experienced, you can still love indies. And also the soul, it's such a personal thing. How can I measure the
Yes.
soul?
I totally agree.
How can I tell you, oh, you have the soul of an indie, or oh, you have the soul of a single A,
Yeah,
or a double A, or
I
you have the
totally
clearly
agree
the
with
soul of a
you.
quadruple A.
I totally agree with you. But how many times did you hear that exact phrase? Oh, you
No, but
really
that's
have a
his
soul
marketing,
of an
because that's
indie.
his marketing.
No,
I mean,
in many events in real life, not about marketing, but from other people. Oh, you really have the soul of an indie game. While I was developing Dino Patrol with Pointer, that's something that I literally heard multiple times.
I know, but for me, it's not. Since today we are doing this crazy task that we will not do, by the way, we will once again find the definition of indie.
Yeah.
Maybe the AI that will make the review of that by our blabbering will eventually discover that. So please do it, AI. But if usually what I do in my process of creativity and in general is to, and what also Sherlock Holmes says, is that you have to have exclude things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in the famous sentence of Conan Doyle is, if you exclude everything, the only thing remaining, even if it's okay, must be the truth. In this case, since we want to try a definition, we need to try to think something definable, and definable means usually quantifiable. Not always, but soul cannot be quantified. So it should be excluded by that. maybe it could be like a nice to have. I don't know. Usually indies are highly passionate people that could re-enter into it, but as like a nice to have, not as a
Yeah, and first of all, I totally agree. Soul is something that it's absolutely not quantifiable. Before we said, okay, here we can try to trace a line, it will be blurry. Here it's impossible to trace a line. Soul it's not quantifiable. And furthermore, no, wait, I will bring this as an additional point later on.
Please
First,
continue. I wanted just
my
to, because like, for
yeah,
Soul,
yeah,
I think it's very interesting. I think it should be part of the definition, but as a most of like, I don't know, kind of like a stereotypical thing, which
mhm.
is mostly true, but you can't rely on stereotypes. I don't know.
Yeah, and the last point, and this list actually, most of this comes from critiques that I heard about Expedition and why it should not be an indie. So no, it's not an indie because it's made by veterans of Ubisoft, so it can't be an indie. I don't agree because, as you said, you can be a veteran and you can still love your job or not really care about necessarily the profit and just do it for the love of the game. And I'm not even sure that that should be part of the definition, but whatever. You could be a veteran and still be creating an indie. I
Yes.
totally believe in this. So I don't care.
Okay.
I don't agree with that critique. And another critique that I heard many times was, yeah, but the studio was very, very big. So a lot of people inside the studio. First of all, the game actually started with just a few people, but that's true. They expanded it and they used many consultants and outsiders to do part of the job, as it's completely normal. And once again, does it necessarily mean that it's not an indie? You cannot have an indie studio with many people working in it, or lots
Interesting
of
point. I want to give you my count on both. So on veteran, I fully agree. I don't think the skill define an indie.
yeah.
Um,
Also because I really don't want to associate indies necessarily with low quality
Low
games.
quality. That actually is the opposite. Most of the time, indies are
It's
fantastic game.
Mhm.
So I think I agree. I think we could also, in our hypothetical definition, exclude skill. So skill is not a factor, and the soul is like a connotation. There we go. Not a definition, it's a connotation. The amount of people, I think it's actually relevant because I think there is a difference in what you said, which is indie studio versus indie game. And here I
Mhm.
want to say something that is a typical Italian, and now all the world will hate me, so sorry. But Italy is the most beautiful country in the world for art style. Contains so much art. I know everyone will hate me. Cancel Diego. I'll do it.
We have lots
But
of
it's a
strong
fact.
opinions today. You said
Yeah.
something about Ubisoft. You said that AI may find the
Okay.
solution. You are saying Italy is the best
Well, the AI
country.
that watches us will find a solution by based on me. No, I'm joking, of course. But what I
Yeah.
mean to say is, uh, joke aside on Italy, blah blah. But what I mean to say is number of people. I think the number once again. I think there is a difference between the studio can make and not an indie game, and vice versa. Think about constructions, and you need certain amount of people. It's just a fact. If you want to build something like the biggest skyscraper in the world, which is in Dubai, if I remember correctly, it's Burj Khalifa, you need not even talking about money. Okay, let's say that everyone works for free. Okay, let's just say everyone works for free. Okay,
Mhm.
everyone wants to make the biggest um, skyscraper in the world. You need still a lot of people. You will still need a lot. Can you make the Burj Khalifa with less people? Yes. It will take more time. Me. And can you do the Burj Khalifa with one person? Very likely, no. Probably he will die before completing the Burj Khalifa alone. So I think number of people is relevant because the truth is that if the team was only 5 people, could they have made Clair Obscure Expedition 33? Yes, of course they could. Could they have made it in the same time with the same quality on all the elements? No, not on the same time. Minimum with more time, and maybe with some cut. And I think that is where the number of people is relevant, because usually when you have a lot of people, it's not really true, because of course we know that more people doesn't mean better games, and also doesn't mean more production and things like that. But generally speaking, more people usually are equivalent to more man hours, which usually are equivalent to bigger projects. Once again, it's been proven that it's not always true. Once the quality of Expedition 33 proves that that game quality is incredible, why not? But I still believe that if you are a single, there are certain limits. If you are 10 person working, there are certain limits. If you have 2,000 person, there are the other limits.
Yeah, I think we're talking about average scope per number of people working.
Yeah, but I think that is where it's interesting, right? Average scope per number of people is a possible definition of indie, or one of the elements of definition. Average scope, because also another example. I am way more.
We have another comment if you want to read it.
Oh, please! I didn't notice. Oh my god.
Yeah, I know you.
Oh my god! Sorry. It's because I'm on the phone. Sorry, guys. Because as you see, I'm in the car because internet doesn't work and blah blah. So please, sorry. You don't know, neither do I. Oh, of course, no one knows. Of course. As I say, we are here to discuss. We have no idea what's going on. Sorry, Damien, also to not answering you. Budget is the easiest way, of course, not the only one, as you both said. If we argue that indie is an artistic cultural movement, then we should make a category for them. Just distinction between the budget. Yes, that's a super interesting point. I want to answer that and then on Unreal. But I think number of people could be an element of indie. Definition of indie. And what Damien said, which is, by the way, super interesting. Thank you for thanking, and thank you for listening to me and Uriel just doing our things, is indie is a movement, really. Usually artistic movement have a manifesto. Do we have a manifesto for indie? So maybe that is what is missing at the current stage of definition of indie. And no, pleasure you for being here, really. I think this is interesting because I can define what is Puntinism, or what is Picasso movement, or what is surrealism, because there is a manifesto that kind of tell me what are the rules. I can say futurism. There are some rules that define, and of course these rules have been broken, and maybe there is the subcurrent. I mean, for example, Dali very famously was against his own movement. There was a lot of people that tried this style and was like, yeah, no, those are not, I am the only one that can do that. No one else can, and blah, blah. It's a kind of very famous thing. But I think this is a super interesting point that Damien's take out. Maybe the problem here is that as gaming industry appropriated indie, but we don't have a manifest for indie. Who should write this manifest? No idea. Maybe GDA, maybe an organization that is international. I'm not saying Muriel, but in the concept of maybe someone that takes this and blah blah. But the point is, maybe that's the point. Maybe we don't have a manifesto, so it's not a movement, and therefore can be quantifiable by numbers, like number of people or budget, instead of values, like a movement, because a movement is not quantified by numbers. We don't quantify surrealism by the number of painting in surrealism. We quantify surrealism by how close you are to the original version of surrealism. I don't know if you understand what I meant. And also, I want your opinion. So I actually think Damien really, and I didn't ever thought about this, but I really think he got the nail. Maybe that's probably is that it's not a movement. Or it should be a movement, and it's not currently a movement.
Yeah, this is very interesting because from what I remember of the time I was actually studying history of art. Okay, we've lost Diego. Oh no, I'm not sure I'm still online. Yeah, it appears I am. So from what I remember from the time I was still studying art, Many movements, most of artistic movements actually came in place or were defined after the time that they were going on. So it was people from the future afterwards looking back and saying, oh, okay, all of these, we can see a pattern, so we can say that that was a movement about something. Now, it's true that some of these actually had a proper manifest and they considered themselves a movement during that same time, but not all of them. And yes, as Diego said, maybe having a manifest about this would be super interesting. But who could write something like that? And would everyone else agree on that? Because, for example, we had a manifest about roguelike games. It was written, or I think it was written in Berlin. It was called Berlin something. That doesn't apply anymore. Most people that develop roguelike games does not agree with that. So, hey Diego, I saw you back for 1 second, but I've lost you again.
Yes.
Sorry, guys, 1 second. Trying to get Diego back. Okay. So yeah, I don't know. It would be interesting to have a manifesto, but it would also be very, very complicated. And I think that we would get, if ever, people to actually agree on that manifesto after a very, very long time. It would not be something immediate. And I think that indie games have been going on for a while now, and we are seeing competitions right now, awards and etc. We have so many people creating indie games, and in this particular moment in our market history, indie games are carrying a good portion of the market. So yeah, maybe a manifest and the movement could be considered in the future, but right now I think we still need something that help us define what an indie game is.
No, like, of course, will people debate on what is the manifest of indie? It makes sense. But it's the same on art, people will create their own manifest later and create their own current of indie, as painting started in a way and then evolved into millions other type of ways because people created their own way of seeing paintings, so surrealism was born because, or even in literature, um, dystopian was born because people didn't believe in the utopian manifest. Renasciment started because people wanted to rebuild the lost beauty of the Roman Empire and blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, we could have the manifest and then people say, I don't agree with the manifest. For me, indie is different. And then they create their own current of indie and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, it's like a design philosophy. I believe in a way of seeing game, not in the Miyazaki way, any type of ways. So I think it would be interesting. And again, if we don't want to go into values, that into numbers, we always go back to this concept. If you can't be quality, you have to be quantity. quantitative. He has to be quantitative. Also, Dani says is part
Diego,
debate. So
you're lagging. You're lagging again. Maybe you can turn off the camera.
There we go. Today you see me. You only hear me.
Oh, this is much better. Actually, we can hear you much better.
Oh, okay. Well, it's okay. It's too interesting to cancel it. It's the best. We have to continue. And I was saying that Damian, it's super interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I love it. We have to continue to discuss this because it's super interesting. I can't wait to really go further. And I was saying that in general, if we can't use value to define indie, because what you said is maybe value. We need qualitative. Sorry, if we use qualitative, we need quantitative. And the movie indie was the spark. Big studio and publisher using internet. But right now, every game is like this. So yeah, exactly. You see, it's exactly that. If everyone is an indie, no one is an indie. Say the famous cartoon.
Yeah.
And also, second point was, and even for Warcraft, do you count the total number of people involved in production or just one? Oh, super good point. And I think this could be just counted with man hours. In general speaking, what I mean is, if I hire a freelancer, it doesn't matter if he's a freelancer or a full-time or a part-time. At the end of the day, I count the number of hours that he put into the project. So, I could have 40 freelancer that each one works 1 hour every week, which count like a one full-time dude, a full-time person, because 40 hours a week. So in this case, of course, roughly, I think man hours, it's a great way to understand that. Also because man hours is not dependent on skill, as Uriel say, if you work 1 hour and you are the best, or you work 1 hour and you are the worst, you still work 1 hour, no matter what. Well, thank you, Damian. But once again, thank you actually to taking out all this super cool interaction point, because the soul, the manifesto, it's carrying out a lot of cool stuff. Once again, I don't think none of three at this point, you, me, and Uriel, will solve this puzzle, but it's super interesting. I think it's incredible food for thought. And you, Uriel, what do you think? How do you count workforce?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to count it as actual hours of work. I agree with you, but I'm still not completely sold on the fact that this factor is able to define if the game is or is not indie, because I can think of games that are extremely big, but had a very small team behind. And at this point, I also have another question. Can a AA also be an indie? Because AAs are purely defined like that because of the budget, but we are saying that indie are not defined like as indies just because of the budget. So can the two things overlap? Can an indie also be a AA? Because I can think of AAs made by very, very few people. And I can also think of indie studios, in this case, because the games are not out yet, that are working on games that are definitely indie games, but the studio is super big because it's the first game, no one is getting paid, and we are counting like 40 to 50 to 60 people in the studio actively working on the game, but still the game is absolutely indie. Or I would define the game as an indie. So I can think of both extremes. Of course, if we are quantifying like too many people to be an indie as over 100, no, I have absolutely no reference of a game that I would consider.
Well, but you can't count the extreme, right? Because the point of definition is to be generalization.
Yeah, but I think that if me, in my personal experience, not just I read online, in just my few years in the industry, have gotten to know these kind of the extremes, I think that maybe these are not so extreme and that there is
Okay,
a lot
so
in
you say,
between.
okay.
So yeah, these are extremes compared to many others, but still this is not like, oh, this is the biggest studio behind an indie game. I don't think so, at least. Otherwise,
No,
well, I
because
know
I
the
think a
biggest
studio
studio
can't
behind.
be used as definition of indie,
Mm,
because indie is a project, it's not a studio. I mean, I can take
yeah,
Ubisoft and then give three people in Ubisoft and they will make an indie game.
yeah, you're right, you're right. They are all working on the same game, though, in this case specifically.
Exactly.
Okay, so
Yeah,
they are
like,
making one project.
okay, okay, fair enough.
But
Okay,
yeah,
let's say,
so
okay,
I'm not sure. I don't say that I disagree with what you're saying, because I see the point and I actually think that I agree. But at the same time, I've got these examples that tells me, are you sure?
well, that's what we're here to discuss. So let's take
Uh,
your point and, for sake of argumentation, okay, let's also exclude people. So, uh, Manifesto, as Damian said, not, and because now everything goes into that and can say. Soul, not, because impossible to define.
mm,
Uh, people, not, because once again, samples that maybe are extreme or not, we don't know, of crazy good amount of people that made small games and vice versa. So what about time? Maybe time is the definition. Would a game that takes 10 years to be made be indie or not? Let's just for the sake of argument.
I think yes, because many indies have been developed in spare time. So they took a very, very long time to actually come out. But just because the person was maybe doing more than one job and just working in their free time. Or the other example that I can think about is the more recent um, Silksong. And that would open another debate. Is Silksong an indie game? It took how many? 7 years, I think we discussed it a few episodes back.
Yes. Okay,
So,
so 1 second, there is a
and
couple of
also,
points. So
yeah,
first point, I agree with you. I don't think time is an element. I still believe people is an element, but not time.
mm,
So let's exclude time. So time is not an element. Maybe someone alone in 10 years can make a game. Damian says, I agree with you on the base that if we think indie as game being subversive and themes and gameplay, even Kojima is an indie. Of course, it's provoking. And I agree with you. I don't think indie can be defined by that, because otherwise, I absolutely agree. I didn't like Death Stranding, but I can't deny the extreme creativity and risk that Kojima took in doing a game that is based on, technically speaking, one of the most boring, and I'm doing commas, mechanics in the world, which is
I would do
walking.
it for you.
Yes, thank you. Because usually walking is just a mechanic to go from A to B, where B is cool things to do. So while I might not enjoy the game, I absolutely agree with Damian. It was absolutely subversive, saying, "Hey, you know what, I make a big budget game into a that mechanic." So I don't think subversive this means that, because on that sense, Expedition 33 is absolutely not revolutionizing in every way. The narrative is fantastic, absolutely, but the gameplay is every Mario RPG ever done. The combat, everything. So there's no revolution in that. It's a fantastic game, but no revolution. Ashux instead says, wouldn't Silksong be already an example of that? I agree. In fact, I don't think Silksong is an indie for me. Because for me, the main point still remains the budget. Uh, Having a lot of money allow you to have a lot of possibilities. And possibilities is usually what indies lack. And I want to go on this point here for a second, which is, why do I think money is important? Because usually I always say, and if you follow me or you've been my student or you have read my book and blah blah blah, you know that I always say that game design, a good game design is the best possible compromise. Sometimes you want to do the super cool, fantastic thing, but you can't. You don't have the time for it. You don't have the money for it. You don't have the knowledge for it. You don't have the I don't know, technology for it. You are making your game on a potato PC. So you do the compromise. You do the best compromise possible, and this is good game design. Now, this will lead to a good game. I think yes, but sometimes it's best to just compromise. I always say that I can make the best Star Wars game ever if they give me infinite money and infinite time and total control and blah blah. So basically, don't give me compromise. Can know that. So why do I think budget is still relevant for indie? Because for me, indie is the class. Let's call it the class. The level. I don't know how to call it, of compromise. Usually, indie are the developer that they take most compromise. Oh, I would love to do this, but I don't have the money. Oh, I would love to be on PlayStation, but I don't know someone on the PlayStation Store. Or I would love to have, I don't know, Troy Baker as voice. But I can't pay it, or I don't know him. Ooh, I would love to be with this big composer, but I can't. Ooh, I will absolutely adore to experiment on this new hardware, but I don't have the money for it. Oh, it will be fantastic to be presented at the Game Awards, but I can't. So usually for me, indie is the realm. There we go. That was the word I was looking for. The realm of compromise. Well, usually, and I say usually, AAA is the word of not compromise, but politics in development. But usually AAA is not compromise. Usually in AAA is about, okay, let's try to make these things. They usually fail, and we know that the quality is not always there, but usually you don't start saying, maybe we'll not be on PlayStation, or maybe we'll not be on, Switch, or maybe we can't have 12 horses together. When I work in AAA, and I think it's one of the reasons why AAA fails, I saw many designers never talk to programmers saying, can we do this? But just making their design and just say, oh, I need 12 horses, just find a way to do this, which is a terrible way to work, please. But you see, not compromise in their mind. So for me, budget or resources, call it whatever you want, it's the definition of indie, because indie is compromise. Compromise on every level of production, because you can't do everything you want. You have to take compromisation. Before going on that and leave Uriel answering to I want just to once again answer to, because otherwise we'll lose the. And please, people, write. I see more people looking at us. And sorry if you're not seeing me.
Yeah.
Terrible internet connection today. And Damien said, and that is the only thing that makes me say the Claroscure is not an indie. Which, so in this case we agree, but only on not being an indie, not what is an indie. We are still missing this critical component. And please, Uri, answer to what I said and share us your opinion.
I actually find very interesting what you're saying about the compromise. You are selling me this definition or this point of view of compromise being what define an indie. But I'm still working. I'm still thinking about all of the possible aspects, because yes, it makes sense, but then why are we calling them indies? Once again, coming back to the initial definition of the word, so indie coming from independent or independence. These limitations that... Sorry, you I didn't get.
Which is not true anymore, Damien said, was connected to the fact that you don't have a publisher, so you're independent, so you are poor, so you don't have money. You are independent from a publisher, which was and kind of still is the major source of money in an industry, so you were poor. You were, let's say that you were independent from money.
Okay, but you are not though, because you will still need money to make the game,
Yeah,
and
but less.
you will be even less free to actually create whatever you want. And yes, from a purely functional point of view, so literally my programmer does not have the time to do that, or I do not have a technical artist, so I'm not physically able to create the effect that I want, or
No,
I
but that
cannot
is still
access to.
connected to resources. You can, and I want also to ask to Ashux, which is super interesting. But just to counter answer yours, uh, you can call. I say compromise, and I say
Mhm.
compromise on resources. But the truth is that, as the Simpson says, you can exchange money for things and services. It's the beautiful sentence of Homer Simpson when he finds $5. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I want to eat, and then his brain says, well, you can exchange money for food and services. Oh, woo, I can eat. So, conceptually speaking, you say yes, an indie as the compromise of the programmer, which will not have if they had the money to hire more programmers or a better programmer. So, like, it's still the same compromise, it's just expressed through a different layer of resource, but a layer of resource that could still potentially be connected to that. Also, while you're answering, I want to read a couple of questions so you have time to think,
Mhm.
because I think there is a lot of cool. And one is actually, which is say, correct me if I'm wrong, but indie versus AAA is just to make a product because they want versus making for money and shutting down uncertainty. I don't think it's that, because you make a product, yes, but you don't want the product to fail. You still hope to make a good game and make money out of it. There are indies. None of the indie that I know are hoping to not make money. I mean, even you, Uriel, I guess when you made
Yeah,
Dinopath, you were hoping to make money out of it.
this is actually the point that I was getting to before. So
Oh, please go then.
it's not just independence from. It's not just compromise in the meaning of exactly what you said. So I cannot accede to those services or those quality things. It's also, if I don't have money, I need money. And I need money more than people that are working in AAA or AA, and this will limit even more, potentially limit even more my creativity or my freedom, because I cannot take, many indies cannot take the risk. This is like the two extremes. One can see indies as they are the most free of all. They can create super innovative products because they don't have quotation on Wall Street, and they don't have hundreds of people depending on the game. They are just a few people putting in maybe 1 year, a couple of years, a few months of work to create a game. So if it fails, who cares? They don't have previous games to defend or a brand. They can just create from scratch, and that's true. But on the other side, they totally need to, they are many indies are betting everything on their next product. If the next product fails, also the company or the dream or the job will fail. So they will need to strictly study the market to be sure that the next game will not fail. And in that point of view, they are even less free than maybe double A's, because they don't have the meaning to the means to create something so extreme as you were saying, but they also don't have the freedom to do something that is too risky. And we saw that very recently with horses. They took that risk and it didn't
But
go.
and now probably they will not make another game.
Yes.
So it's once again, it's money, it's resources. And to answer to John, I agree with Damien. I think you have a good point, and I think the answer is yes. Uh, I think that is the reason why Silk Song for me is not an indie. The amount of 7 years making a game, it's very paid. It's very little. And why they can do it? Because of course Hollow Knight made shit tons of money. Fantastic game, deserve all this money, absolutely. But Team Cherry is in a position that for me is the opposite of what is an indie. He has the luxury of not taking compromise. It's the same of GTA. GTA is in a luxury point, and that's why for me GTA is a quadruple A, because it is in a such luxury point that can dictate window of timing. What I mean by that is that one of the things that you do in a video game is having a window of release. So usually you determine when your game should be released based on many things like I don't know, Christmas, other games, disponibility of money, advertisement, and blah 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 blah. And this is something that you have to work very hard. And sometimes if you miss your window of launch, you have to wait maybe 6 months for the next one. Now GTA has the luxury of not having that. It's GTA. Other people needs to adapt to when GTA get out. That's what happened. Oh shit, GTA get out? Okay, we cancel our release because we know that no one will buy us and people will buy GTA. So GTA is quadruple A because it can dictate what the rest of the industry does. What is indie because it can't dictate shit because they don't have the power to do it. Team Cherry is not indie because it can dictate, oh, I want to spend 7 years to making a game. If I go now to one of my clients, and I'm sure it's the same for you, John, and says, oh, I can make a great game. It only takes 7 years. Probably your client will look at you and say, yeah, sure, fuck you. I can't spend 7 years of money. It's too much of a risk. So I don't think that's yes, if you make so much money that you are not into the compromise, beautiful. I want to be in your opinion, in your shoes, please give me money. But you are not an indie anymore. You are not compromising anymore. Also, Damian left this other interesting point. As I say, Damian is giving us so much food for thought, and also John too. But Damian was here earlier, John, so he gave us more food for thought. You need to write more. And Damian said, what about being an independent from traditional distribution method like Steam, itch.io, and so on? itch.io is so indie, but serve a market of people looking for cheap games. So who knows? Yes, that's the point. Like Steam is definitely not indie anymore, right? I mean, technically, it's indie. Technically, everyone can be on Steam. In fact, so many games get released on Steam, but it's now mainstream. Like gamers know Steam. While itch.io, my brother, which is a gamer, he's a AAA player. He plays FIFA and this type of things. He has no idea what is itch.io. So from a mainstream point of view, I think it's like, I don't know, something that is connected to what we define as audience. Mainstream, itch.io is definitely not a traditional distribution method. Gamers, itch.io is definitely a distribution method. Ooh, and John left the bomb. I will leave you with this bomb and I think about it. So this time you get the hot potato, Uriel. So indie is a category in which you're stuck until you're successful. And that's super interesting part. And I think, yes, it's true. If your first game is successful, you stop being an indie. Your first project was indie and then you stop being an indie. If your first game is unsuccessful, you stay as an indie and you make another indie game until you make a successful game because you escape the compromise zone or the highly compromised zone, because I believe all game design is compromised, but let's call it high compromise zone, low compromise zone. I don't know. Please, John, invent a better name. And Uriel, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's
That's a
incredible.
bomb, Uriel, like John, take out a bomb.
We are touching so many super interesting takes all at once. Yeah, this could make sense. You are stuck as an indie until you are successful. Still, it collides with many people that I know that are proud of being indie and that keep. And here I will mention something that we haven't mentioned up until now. An indie mentality or indie mindset even after a successful game. For example, the I don't know how to say it in English. Let me see if I can. Plastic Duck Simulator. I didn't remember the word in English. I know the people behind that game. That game has been super successful, and they are still, at least from what I'm able to see, working and talking with a very indie mentality and proud of being indie. So what does that mean? They lost their right to define themselves as indies because
No, actually, you have to answer to Ashux. Ashux put you into another corner.
Oh, sorry. I will read it. Is there a game that you would consider indie after the team individual make it big? I'm not sure I understand the question.
Basically, do you know any team that made a lot of money with a project and they stayed indie with the next ones? Like the next project, they said it was indie, not in their mindset, but just indie.
No, I don't think I can think of that example.
And you see, John says, and while you're thinking, John says Vampire Survivor. I disagree, John, because Vampire Survivor has zero constriction, because Vampire Survivor can make any type of partnership. It did it with so many important IPs that I would love to have those IP in my portfolio and work with them. And also, John said, so an indie set that were actually is a blocker to. Well, here's the thing. If we want to be politically correct, I kind of agree with your point. But if I not exactly agree, sorry. I think an indie is someone that is constrained by compromise. So he has to take compromise. I think an indie mindset instead is someone that take compromise as a way to be better. So I give you $1 gazillion billion and no limit and nothing, and you probably came out with a very generic, boring idea. And this was happening a lot with social media, you know, big companies giving endless money to social media and they just spat out, oh, well, you know, this is TikTok, but for that. Or this is TikTok, but with AI, which is literally what OpenAI did. Oh, we just did TikTok, but with AI. Okay, because they have endless money, so they can just copy and that's it. Instead, you can have a good indie mindset by, you know, that you don't have the compromise, but you still act as sometimes you have to make the compromise to be better, you know, to make even a card design. I think John here can actually give us some insight, because for people who doesn't know, John is very expert on car. But let's imagine that I can make any car I want, you know. I would probably make a sport car with, I don't know, a Ferrari heart and blah, blah, blah. But if I tell you, no, you have to make the fastest 3-wheel car with only 3 wheels, basically, you will have to invent something really cool, something really creative, something really difficult. And so maybe you use that to invent a better engine than then you put on a normal 4-wheel car. They will be more efficient just because you had to limit yourself. So for me, it's not that an indie limit their success, is that at the start, an indie, it's limited by the lack of resources. A good indie mindset is to self-limit yourself in order to get better results. Or apply good game design, the art of compromise, by willing, not by necessity. Also, this true was not about what I say now, but Vampire Survivor. I don't sell myself. Also, John, also Damien says something which is, what is success? Absolutely true, of course. And that's why I think success is not the right word. I think resources. An indie has no resources. An indie mindset is someone that has resources but act as someone that doesn't have resources.
I like this. So we can have an indie mindset that is not necessarily an indie. And we can
Exactly.
also have the opposite. We can have people working on indies that don't have an indie mindset, and that will probably lead to failure.
Exactly.
Hmm.
I think this your concept of mindset, I think, is very important, and it came from John. An indie mindset is to basically apply correctly limitation to enhance your productivity, which is what a lot of indie do. Even if less money, they make fantastic game. Someone that is being forced to be an indie is someone that has this limitation, not by desire, but external forces. I literally, you have zero money, you have to do that. It's like I think it's similar to the concept of growth mindset in marketing. Exactly. It's being scrappy, making a meal out of limited ingredients, say John. Yes, and I think this is being an indie. It's being limited. It's taking compromise by force, by external decision. Well, the indie mindset is to doing that by voluntarily decision, or by want to do that. I don't know how to say. Yeah, once again, I need to structure this definition, I guess. But basically, I have to buy bad clothes because I'm poor. I decide to buy bad clothes because it's better for the environment. It's yeah, it's that. It's exactly that. It's why you're saving the environment. Or I'm only buying thrift shop because I'm cheap. I'm not saving the environment. I'm forced to doing it. No, I buy secondhand clothes because I want to save the environment. So this is a decision, not a limitation. And that's the indie mindset. Is like I limited myself by decision. No, I limited myself because I'm literally limited. I don't have the resources to do. If I could, I will buy, I don't know, Gucci, but I can't. So I buy secondhand.
Okay, at this point, I have to ask the provocative question: what if I want to give me limitation, and at the same time I don't have the option to not have the limitation? So I have the limitation. I cannot do big projects, but I decide, because I want to create a very, very small scale
Well,
project.
then you are an indie with an indie mindset, and probably you will make a very good game.
Mm.
They are not mutually exclusive. You can have be an indie and have an indie mindset, or being an indie without an indie mindset, or being not an indie with an indie mindset. There are like 4 permutation of this thing. I don't know how to say.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
indie mindset, and being an indie. Sorry, 3 permutation, not 4. So 3 permutation. I don't know how to count anymore. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I didn't have many expectation for today's episode to actually get to a definition, or even just a proper understanding of what we could use to classify an indie. But I actually think that we got pretty close.
I don't know. Once again, I don't be so arrogant to say I have definition. I like what we achieved, but I don't know if it is. I'm
Yeah.
sure that someone will find something else. But we can do more of this event in the future, and continue the discussion when, with a cold mind, everyone who participate today, and maybe some people on LinkedIn give, and YouTube too gave us other point of discussion, and continue it.
Yeah, for me, up until this time, the baseline to truly decide if the game is an indie game or not an indie game, it was from my experience with publishers. So while I was developing Dino Patrol, I spent 3 years traveling and going to most of the conventions and events that I was able to go throughout Europe, outside Europe, going to pitch the game to publisher, basically looking for money. And one of the first lessons that I learned doing that the hard way was the competitor slide in the pitch. So you usually select a few competitors, you put them in the pitch deck, and you show them to the publisher saying, okay, try to pitch my game. It can be something like that. And that's the first lesson that I learned. That's not the competitor slide. That's like the inspiration slide, because the competitor slide is very, very different from that. It's more of a market competitor. And the way I learned this was, no, these are not your competitors. Hades is not your competitor. And after that, of course, I learned how to do the slide, etc. But I keep reminding myself also, while I was correcting the student's task or something like that, every time basically that I saw a pitch, if a game is not your competitor and you are a very, very small studio, probably that game is not an indie. So even games that we consider, I used to consider indie without really stopping myself to think about that. Then if I have to do this comparison and say, okay, but would a publisher accept this game as a competitor for a new starting studio? If the answer is no, probably that's not an indie, because it's playing on a different field from a new starting studio.
Super interesting point, and I want to say on that, yes. And my indie came from having worked in AAA, and then I've worked with indie too, and saying like, oh, seeing how two different teams work. And in one of the team, and that's where compromise came from. In AAA, I also, by mistake, for me that's a mistake, not taking compromise. Okay, always like, we can do it, yeah, blah blah, let's add more, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. And while in indie was always kind of the opposite, like, oh, it will be super cool if we could do that, yes, but we can't. Oh, I will love the game at this feature, but we can't add it. We don't have the time, we don't have the money, we don't have the knowledge to do the best with what we have in our pot. But one thing I don't say that is right. And John is saying having a publisher can leave them out of indie. Yes, because it could potentially give them resources, reducing their compromise, or potentially eliminating the compromise if you give them infinite resources, or make their indie mindset even stronger. Yes, because a publisher that give a lot of limitation can potentially, by maybe giving a limitation into the into the creativeness, make your game better. I mean, I will always cite this. One of the coolest projects that one of my students ever made came from the idea that we made these things in Hive, which is inspired by the Kobayashi Maru in Star Trek, which is give the students an impossible task to teach them the difficulty. And this in 1 month, an open world game with a single mechanic other than movement. And jump is considered a mechanic. So only moving left, right, up and down, and one other mechanic. And usually the idea is like, you will make a terrible game and you will learn the difficulty of it. And one time, one student, Antonio Giorgione, made a game that simulated the idea to being underwater and working in a like Big Daddy issue suit. And so the game is basically just walking around super slowly in a very weird environment because it's inspired by Under the Sea, and collecting stuff. And it works super well. It's super good because it takes the limitation and made it into a strength. Oh, walking is the limit. Okay, let's make walking challenging, and let's make it slower, but give an excuse for narration why it's supposed to be slower, and so on and so forth. And that's for me is a good indie mindset that could come from a publisher, probably not for the good of the team, but just for like, I don't know, we don't want that into the game, or we want that into the game. For example, a lot of time in the past year, wokeness has been a discussion about limit. Oh, you should put under comma woke. You should not put under comma woke. Oh, you should add more sexual things in your game. You should not add sexual things. You should add more blood into your game. You should not add blood in your game. You should add sex scene to your game. You should not add sex scene to your game. So I think, yes, I think it could work in this way. And Ashius, how much does knowledge of the craft demerit your indies? Oh, this is something that we discussed at the start, and we think that this does not demerit your indie, because just being good and making a game doesn't make you free of constraints or other thing. And the example here was actually the Italian team from Bradley the Badger, which are all ex-Ubisoft with 30 years of knowledge, but they left Ubisoft to open their own studio to make their own game, which is Bradley the Badger. Does have a publisher, yes, but I don't think just being good automatically make you not an indie. Also because seniority doesn't necessarily mean good, but in this case, I guess you meant it as senior as being good. But yeah, we've been long. So I think we can close it unless you want to say anything else, Uriel, or someone has super other interesting points to tell.
No, I think we can stop now. And I believe that it will, some other points will come up in the future.
Sure.
Maybe we can just do a second part.
Okay, so I came back for 1 second just to say hi. Once again, I'm in the car, not in computer working, so yeah.
You're very indie right now.
Yeah, I am very compromised also because I'm in a car. Probably there are some rapists next to me. They have bad intention.
I hope not.
Yeah, who never knows, you know. So no, thank you first of all, because I think this has been the actual longest episode we ever done.
Yes.
Definitely. And a lot of super good points. Really, I know it sounds like, oh, Diego, you know, you want to be the guy. Oh, you're fantastic. No, really, honestly, super good points. You, Uriel, John, Ashius, Damian, really all super good point. And I think, as Uriel said, definitely there will be people commenting and leaving other points that we didn't think. So I don't know, maybe not next week, I think, because too much week to week, but in the future we will
also
continue
because
the discussion.
we are getting into the Christmas time.
Oh, it's true.
Yeah.
So what is Christmas?
What is Christmas?
You know, thank you for being with us. Thank you for honestly the super incredible, super cool things, because you really give point to me too. I came here without my definition of indie, and now I think I have my own definition, which doesn't mean it's real or correct, but it's mine, and it came from your point, and especially this indie mindset differentiation that came from it. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.